The much longer answer, it depends on the girl.
Uh, yeah, that's still true, but unfortunately, yeah, as I now know more, and this video just, at least, I don't have any notes aside from me, so this is just my mind in 2025 compared to my mind back then. But yeah, it's less complicated now, but
but even that's not the most accurate answer.
It's not the most accurate answer. So, for me specific, again, and it depends on you and your support cards. If you're free to play, you need to figure out how to play with what you're working with. As of the point of this recording, the only, I guess, time sensitive thing is that everyone's still saving for Kita-san Black. So, but again, as for training a girl, it depends on your own methods, I believe.
Despite how unhelpful that might sound.
And that is unhelpful. But I do get into it a bit more.
The more accurate and even less helpful it is, it can be complicated. If you don't have awakened high-level support cards and or you don't have good inheritances, you'll likely have to follow the girl's base design.
So, yeah, that's specifically true. I made the mistake of pretty much going 50-50 on scouting for Uma Musume or trainees, and then scouting for support cards when you should, you can still go 50-50, but that would be the bare minimum, and I think any veteran trader would usually push you towards support cards if you are trying to, again, try to get a little bit more carrots, because the carrot economy, as I mentioned in a comment, reply to a comment in a recent video, yeah, it's not that great, but you can do what you can, and I mainly gauge that based off of, what you can get recurringly. But this includes events as well. So events, you'll be able to pick up carrots here and there, but it just won't be a lot. We'll see how much we actually get. And if anything changes down the line, which would be nice, because, yeah, just training your girls' support cards are definitely a key factor, if not near 50-50 in terms of responsibility, as opposed to pulling more Uma Musume to train. But pulling Uma Musume to train at all is important, because you need about 15-20 minimum anyway.
If you follow the girl's base design, then you have to make sure you hit your stats. But to hit your stats, you need higher level support cards and or good inheritances. I say this because I'm pretty sure higher level support cards provide larger bonuses to stat training, especially...
I'm certainly sure of that now. Again, keep in mind, the only other thing I'll say about this video time-wise is that, or I should say time-wise, is that this video was taken pretty much at the beginning of Uma Musume, so people were still learning. This was like, I think, even just 2 to 3 weeks out from the game's actual just release in general worldwide. Well, Japanese server really, but you get the point. And that's why I put that note on screen. I'm trying to point, but there's one JP trainer with videos. I was looking around for resources and what people were saying. But for the most part, yes, awakening your support card or uncapping your support cards, getting max limit break is important, but the other nuances that if you're free to play and you're just unfortunate, and you're still trying to reroll, but you don't get anything in your rerolls, you have to work with what you got. What I have right now can get me URA champion, so as you'll see in my easy prog or early prog videos, I'm doing my best, but it is still a struggle to kind of stay above water if you're really, really unlucky. I can see that happening. But again, it depends on what your situation is. Everyone's going to be different, kind of, unless you look at guides and whatnot. Then you should be above.
Especially if that support is present for the training in the current turn, or multiple supports because they stack. In general, the more supports that are present for training in a turn, the more stats you will gain during that training.
It's approximately 5%, just at a base level. Obviously, there are things like mood effects, training effectiveness that come with the support cards, but just the support being there is about 5%, if not 5%, to whatever gains you're making, on top of your mood modifier, which is approximately 10% per mood above neutral, or negative 10% if you're under neutral, but that you're trying not to hit neutral mood.
Inheritance can change the adaptability of your girl's strategy by literally giving you another strat that you can train your girl for.
So I've seen some people do this for, they turn, say, a late runner into a pace chaser, or even a front runner if possible. I haven't seen too many examples, but obviously they're really prevalent. If you can boost someone to even just A or B aptitude, you have a way out, but then that means your support cards need to be really strong. If you push an aptitude to A, or with later inheritances to S, I believe that can happen. Yeah, you have a much easier time. But obviously, like I said, or may have said before, and maybe say this video, your stat distribution needs to make sense, because obviously if you have too much stamina for a short race, it doesn't make as much sense. If you don't have enough stamina or don't have enough power when you're running an end or late strat, then you might find yourself losing your A races, even if you have a lot of uncapped SR, SSR, or even just rare cards when that happens, and it's actually better for you to run max uncapped rare card than, say, a non-capped at all SR card. I don't know about SSRs. Again, that's numbers for veteran trainers or for those who know to say, but just to say it out there.
This is why I might make free-to-play jokes about the base design of a girl. You can literally make, say, a gold ship a leading girl if her inheritance increases her leading or escape strategy to level A or S.
Again, these names are relative to the Japanese version.
Inheritance events and the skill hint inheritance, there's just so much at play. You train your stats for the strategy you're using, generally, and what stats you'll train to what degree is dependent on the strategy and the race types you'll be entering.
Nothing to say here, that's still pretty much true. But I guess the one addition, if I were to add more, is that yes, as the legend race at the time of this video is going to come out, as event races come out, as you train for PvP races, or you just guess what kind of races you're going to go in for PvP in general, if the races are going to be random to some extent, then yeah, you want to prepare for those specifically with green skills, so on and so forth, just to give you that extra edge, because assuming that you're at level, and the game usually matchmakes you at the level, unless you're entering certain PvP modes, then having an extra, say, 40 stamina or 40 speed, or if you get 777s from Machikane's special skill, it's gonna help.
I added that part about the race type because the race type can change the distribution of your stats, and the skills, because there are skills that only help you if you're in a certain race type. To go over each and every strat and stat distribution on a general level is difficult, also because of what skills are available to you. So if you ask the question, what stats should I train, you also have to ask what your support cards are, what you'll be inheriting, how to train every turn due to turn RNG, and again, the earlier statements, and much more.
So skills are a certain thing that I'm just seeing, not wishy-washy, but I'm seeing like polarizing opinions. Some people say skills are not as worth it. Some people say they are very worth it, even if they're white skills. I am on the side. I mean, if you were to ask me, I say definitely take golden skills, but if you don't have anything else, just take white skills. Obviously, take what you need. If, say, you're trying to do URA champion and you know you're missing enough power, try to take skills that help with what power gives you, for example, acceleration skills and whatnot. But again, the flip side of this is specifically for acceleration skills. Some people say that it's useless because it only happens for like 0.8 of a second, 0.5 of a second. Unless you have a gold skill, then it lasts for longer. And then on longer races, say a 3,000 meter race, you have more off of certain skills because they proc based off race length. So you have a skill for longer on a longer metered race than, say, a sprint race where, say, if a skill happens for like 1% of a race's duration or length. Apparently that's what can happen. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Hope I'm not wasting time. But say 1%. So for 30 meters, your horse girl gets this skills effects for a 3,000 meter race, as opposed to a sprint race or a shorter race that's 1,400 meters. 1% of that is only 14 meters. So shrug. But that's skills are. I do say take skills if you need them. But if you can save on them and get gold skills, because support cards tell you if you're going to get gold skills or have a chance of getting it, then save for those instead. But if you're having trouble just getting to your goal races, just take skills.
The presence of so many variables, along with RNG during training, like I said, is why this question is so complicated. If you're a whale, or you have the fully awakened inheritances available, or whatever resources you have, do whatever you want.
I always try to add that nuance in, like if you're a whale or if you have the resources, you can do whatever you want, because there is a very low level in terms of getting to the mid-game, in my opinion, and in my definition of the mid-game is grinding for inspirations, grinding for good legacy Uma Musume, preparing for event races outside of the scenario, or if an event scenario comes out, then making girls for that scenario because they're only available for a limited time. The other side of this is what I said about, what did I say earlier?
If you're a whale, or with RNG during training.
RNG during training, so a very popular example is the acupuncture. Another example can be the crane game, because you need to proc recreation after the start of your second year. Those events coming out at a time that you want them to come out, and they may come at an inopportune time, it's bad. And then acupuncture, I agree with some veteran trainers' opinions to just take the fourth option. It can fail, but failing the fourth option, the charm, I think is what it's called. Hopefully, maybe I should put that on screen, but you'll see it. The charm option grants you bonus friendship per training for the whole run, as opposed to the other ones. I think I usually try to aim for the stat one. Yes, getting hit by that really, really hurts, so it's not something I would advise early trainers or trainers who are struggling to win URA championship consistently. I don't advise them to take that one, but again, you do what is relevant to you. Again, look online if you want to see the effects of that event. It's all available.
Like I said, is available or whatever resources you. Best I can do in a video's worth of time is to give you examples of my own experience, starting with the most simple example and most used by both English and Japanese trainers, Bakshi no.
So we'll get into examples here because it does depend on the girl that you're doing. Basically, I just wanted to also say find your own groove with the girls you're training. So in this case, Sakura Bakshi no, pretty self-explanatory, but I'll let past Jordan talk.
So when I trained my Bakshi no, I threw in 5 speed supports and 1 trainer. I don't doubt you could use 6 speed supports.
Some people do.
But I used the Aoi trainer for a boost to my outings if possible. When you unlock the trainer outings, they give you goodies up to the final outing, which gives you a skill. I used 5 speed supports because at the time, I figured out that the more supports you have during training for a turn, so say I was doing stamina training and there are 3 supports there, the larger your stat increase for that turn will be. In addition, I also knew at this time that by building bonds early by training with the supports, it doesn't have to be a bond support, which is signaled by the exclamation mark.
It's called friendship training, or rainbow training if you want to use that phrase as well.
They just need to be there, the support. If you have multiple rainbow supports available in a turn, the stat increase stacks on top of each other, so you can actually hit plus 50 stats overall in a turn. And higher level supports boost bond increases and the starting value of the support's bond, so that's why I said higher level supports will help you out more.
Yeah, that's a really popular one. I went over in past videos, but just to say it here as well. Obviously, as you can see, funny enough, these stat gains are what I'm actually getting similarly, but that's because the supports here you see on screen, I think are rare SR. But anyway, so talking about the passive effects from support cards, usually you want the ones that have to do with boosting your stats during training. Even things like a flat 1 to power or 1 to wits or 1 to something else, that does add up because I'm pretty sure that's base and then modifiers affect it. So that one stat is affected by any modifiers. But things like training effectiveness, things like mood effect, which is only multiplicative to the training. So I think the common example is, say you have 20% effectiveness from being at max mood, because that's the effect. If your mood effectiveness, say, says 20%, then that 20% effectiveness becomes 24. It doesn't become 40%. That's not additive. But I think what's multiplicative is training effectiveness, friendship training, and bond boost. All right, so there's another kind of training boost. But basically, training with the support, that effect is multiplicative on top of the mood effect, on top of training effectiveness, so on and so forth, which is why the eventual stats you might get like 80 plus speed, plus 40 plus power. You might get 60 plus stamina with 20 to 30 plus guts, things of this nature.
And when I looked it up, this is kind of why some of the Japanese community generally emphasize increasing support bonds and following them during turns for rainbow training unlocks later.
Some of you may have seen a guide that talks about a flowchart on what you should do training at the very beginning before your junior make debut. That's essentially what you're doing. There's not a lot of reasons not to do that, aside from obviously doing beginning of training stuff like recreation to up your mood. But that's, again, I think there's some interesting trainer expression to see there. But for the most part, you're following a flowchart of, hey, how many bonds are there? Do I want to increase 2 to 3 here, or do I want to gamble on the next turn? But essentially, you are chasing friendship bonds and friendship because you want the friendship training. Nothing more special.
Which is what I did when possible
to say there.
For my Bakshi no. There's not much else to say about Bakshi no in my experience because, for races, she has a lot of short distance races, which simplifies her training. At least that you don't have to think about stat distribution as much. However, your strategy changes when you start training someone like, say, Silent Suzuka.
So just to end on Sakura Bakshi no there, if there's any other takeaway you should take from any of my videos, I know I say this a lot, but at least for this video, Sakura Bakshi no should be the easiest Uma Musume to train. And if you for some reason don't have a bunch of speed cards, it's still going to be relatively easy, but you might see some trouble because you still want your stamina and the rest of your stats to be at least like minimum 180, 200, but preferably higher. And then as you get stronger support cards, you can build everything on top of speed. But otherwise, your main goal when training Sakura Bakshi no is to get her speed to 1200, which is the cap for the URA scenario. But again, if you're over that, though, if any of your stats are under 180 or 200, while you're training Sakura Bakshi no, just get them to close enough. You can get them, like I said, 180, because if you're doing URA or going through events, you might just be getting a little bit of stats here and there anyway, but that's the general gist of it. Just 4 to 5 speed cards, and then maybe whatever you want, a trainer, a wits card, those are popular picks. And then it went to get really, really high grade, or you have a high grade power card, 5 speed cards, and a power card. But it depends on what your flavor is and what works for you. Going back to my thesis statement of sorts.
This is when you need to not only ask what stats to train, but then also how to train your stats well. Silent Suzuka is also a leading/escape or runner/advancing type girl if you inherit that into it.
Or in the current version, frontrunner, pace chaser. There's one thing to say here. I don't know as much about Silent Suzuka. I don't normally train frontrunners and pace chasers on short races because I personally like making training gold chip, which means I want inheritances and or legacies that affect, well, gold chip, which is for medium and long races. So take my advice with a grain of salt.
But a lot of her races are mid-distance, which means you need more stamina. Heck, my Ura champion Suzuka is built with guts too. I cut down on power because, like Bakshino, I relied on the fact that she stays in the top 3 most of the time, so power is not needed.
Power is needed, guts is less needed, but if, again, as always, if you can fit in some guts while doing everything else pretty much as you want, feel free to do so, but power is needed. Yes, Silent Suzuka should be staying in the front, that's how she procs her unique skill, but power is a much more important skill than I thought back then.
But this is where you need to learn how to train efficiently, not just spam high tension into a stat for the rest of the run. I maxed out my bond with a stamina support card. Heck, I maxed out 2 in one training, actually.
So there's something to be said really quickly here, that if you are in mid-distance races at Silent Suzuka, it's not. I would personally take a Super Creek into this, but obviously when you get to high end, you probably don't need it. You're inheriting stamina instead. That's the other method. So if you don't want Super Creek, and I would take it just to get Swinging Maestro for just Swinging Maestro, because that's a very, very powerful stamina skill, if nothing else to say. So even on girls who have like mile races, I like taking Swinging Maestro, because even though its effect is not as great, apparently, you want that stamina because you're probably focusing on speed and or power instead. But that's me. You do what works for you.
When I did this, I knew I didn't have to do as many stamina trainings if I get rainbow trainings that increase stamina a lot in one turn. Obviously, if there are multiple rainbow trainings in the same spot, yeah. And even when you know what stats you want to train, in my opinion, you have to be able to determine, know, and predict the turns where you'll earn the most points.
And you have to predict the races that you'll go into outside of the scenario. So here, my stamina is a bit high, but as people are finding out, when you're racing outside of the scenario, you actually need more stamina than you think you do, because people, at least it's only a few, and there are obviously thousands of trainers right now, but if you're seeing that your Uma Musumes are experiencing the stamina drop in terms of races, and you'll know because they suddenly just start falling to the back with pretty much no explanation, that's stamina at work.
I made the most of my summer training with Suzuka by doing a 2-study 2 training rotation. I do this better on my present girls, but basically, you only do non-study training if your stamina is at 50-ish, or enough for your training failure rate to be near 0%. You
do whatever works for you.
You can do whatever you're comfortable with, but the point
like
is
I
there.
said.
I normally rest before the summer training. You'll get a warning event 2 turns before. If you do that, you can near guarantee 2 training sessions, that it's not study, more depending on how you want to gamble on failure, but you study because it's essentially free high-level training for no stamina.
So there is a reason to rest during the summer. The most optimal thing is if your mood is down, but obviously that's not optimal if your mood is there in the first place. But RNG can basically lower your mood right before summer training, or maybe you have a goal race right before summer training, and then something happens as Tazuna tells you that you're about to go to the summer, or you're in early June, which is when she gives you that warning. So resting, if you can heal 50 energy while increasing your mood, it's worth it to rest, because you want the other 3 turns of your summer training to be productive training, and that 10% mood modifier from good to max mood does add quite a bit, especially as you're earning more stats.
Because, well, you actually gain stamina for doing study training. I started using summer more for increasing knowledge most of the time for this reason, but obviously you take other training if the stat increase is high enough to warrant it, either through rainbow training or support presence, or just the nature of your stats being higher that turn as opposed to, say, studying, or of course resting. You can apply the same thing outside of summer training, but being able to maximize your stat increase during training is key to making your strategy overall work, or at minimum give your girls higher stats.
At this point, one kind of tangent point to talk about is that if you just outstat your competition, you should usually win, but there's always RNG. You can outstat your competition by like 100, 200 points. There is a chance of you losing, but you're not really likely to lose. So once you're at basically... A simple way to say it is that all of your stats, say for maybe guts, are at 600 or above, and your guts is at like 300, 400, you have a very good chance of winning URA finals. Or at least at the minimum. If all of your stats are above 700 to 800, except for maybe guts being at 400, you're going to win the URA finals with pretty much any girl that you are racing with.
Which is how I got my silent Suzuka where she went, Ura champion. And... as you move to girls who use the insert/betweener or push/chase strategy,
favorite.
You really need to know the girls' Ura final races, or basically the races in between, and how to distribute stats with the resources you have. My Ura finalist gold ship could have won if I didn't mess up her skills and stats. This is where it's harder to answer what stats to train, because there might be more than one area to even improve in.
600 speed, 600 to stamina, 600 power, 300 to 400 guts, really 300 guts, 400 wits. Bare minimum. And you'll probably have to clock with gold chip, but that's my gold chip.
I trained my gold chip before I trained my Suzuka, but after I understood the need to distribute my stats according to the races and pushing strategy.
When I mentioned that stat distribution, I say that's the bare minimum to have a chance at winning URA finalist. This comes from someone who's trained gold chip at least 100, 200 times over the course of global and Japanese, and that's based on my memories. Now, I'm not saying I'm a veteran trainer by any means, but I've definitely trained gold chip the most, so take my advice seriously when I say 600 speed, 600 power, 600 stamina. Now, you can go 500 stamina if you have swinging maestro, but if you want to play it safer, you have a better chance winning gold chip. Now, the only other nuance is that if you have a long distance URA instead, then you definitely want to be 600 stamina. But if you have medium race, if you know or can manipulate on purpose, because you can do so, if you manipulate your URA finalist races to be medium length races, you can have your stamina be at 500. Just know that usually when you're taking gold chip out of scenario mode, unless you have a specific reason to build medium, she's going to be in long races. So that's why I say 600 stamina. Obviously, you want more stamina. Obviously, you want more power, and then speed on top of that. But for the sake of winning URA championship, the URA finals, 600 to 700 speed, 600 to 700 stamina, 600 to 700 power, guts lower than everything else, probably at 300, 350, and then wits at 400. That's the guideline.
In specific. But I didn't know exactly the races I'd be in, the stat distribution that was most optimal for the supports inheritances I had, and I messed up picking skills that may or may not have triggered less frequently than I wanted.
If you have the free Meijiro McQueen from the shop, basically, take that and then take the get a super creep, get swinging maestro. With those two skills, or swinging maestro definitely carries you. But even with just a 30 super creep, now the nuance here is that if you don't have a level 45 super creep or above, you do have to focus super creep at the very beginning. Because stamina is something to worry about in the middle of gold chip specifically. This is all about gold chip and training gold chip in the URA scenario. Otherwise, as you may also have special week events, SSR will help out as well, but really any speed, SR or SSR should be enough speed for your gold chip. At least 2.
Sure, one problem might have been bigger than the others, or the sole problem, but it doesn't change the fact that they needed to be improved on, regardless.
Oh, and a power SSR.
Of knowing how I wanted to distribute my stats. I can line up my stats best for my strategy, but if they're too low, I might need to level up my support cards and improve my inheritances so that my stats are overall higher. If the races I'd be in at the end are only mid-range races, like the Ura final I failed in with gold chip, then I might have wanted to focus on mid-range skills instead of general skills.
I have too much guts here.
If I want to brute force it a bit, I just level up my gold chip or awaken her to unlock skill hints or improve her stats straight out. So while I might know what stats to train and how to train them somewhat efficiently, there are still a lot of variables that go into play during training.
There are a lot of variables that can go into training. If you rest and get sleep deprived into migraine, if you just run into the acupuncture event and fail for whatever reason, if you run into, say, hey, I'm going to gamble on a 10% and you fail 10% twice during a training, that can immediately remove you from URA finalist.
Oh, and RNG.
With, if your support cards are not at the top and you can't just power through.
Never forget about RNG.
Never forget about RNG.
Is there a walkthrough for every girl? Yeah, maybe.
Yes, there is.
but I think it would depend on the person until a god strat is found and agreed on, or we determine that it's best to give more a guideline than exact play-by-play for each girl or trainer.
There are guidelines.
I'm in support of the latter because unless you're a whale and or have the resources at hand, you can only do the best with what you get.
So you can look online. Game Torah is something that a lot of trainers may reference. For good reason. If you go on that site, you can literally find anything you want resource-wise. I won't link it in the description because robots have hurt me before with certain links, so I'm trying to be good. But I will name drop that site. Obviously, you can go to the Uma Musume Discord, official Discord, or Discord for at least where trainers are all talking about, at this point in time, Kita-san Black, but you get the point. There is a lot of help available for anyone who wants to know information, and there's definitely a lot. Now, in the end, a lot of it is speculation because it's speculation, but it's educated speculation. So you can trust the information, because if it were not trusted, then we would not have as many trainers being so successful as you can see in global server right now, in my opinion anyway.
So again, another solution for most people, and reasonable for this game, is to re-roll. That's an acceptable option as well.
It's a very acceptable option. In fact, some trainers will advise you to do so.
But as for what stats to train, well, this
I would advise you to do so.
video should go to show how complicated it can be. Maybe to a more knowledgeable trainer or an experienced trainer, it's easy. Maybe someone knows the exact effects of all the stats now, so it's easier to kind of strategize.
We definitely know now, and it is certainly easy. But whether or not RNG gives you, say, the sparks or inspiration you want, whether or not it graces you with successful acupuncture, whether or not you get the events and rests that you want, and not get sleep deprived 33% of the time, because even that hurts, is a whole different story. Or if you just outright lose your races, even though you have double circles in all of your judge review, even though that's not obviously an identifier, but it's a good way to see, hey, I have stats, my stats are at level, I should be able to win, and that's when you can clock.
But that means that advice is being kept secret, because more than a few people have a lot of questions right now in the community.
And people still have questions in the community.
There's a reason why even some Japanese video guides have comments that go, "That's great, I wish I had the supports and inheritances you did."
And that is still it's a common sentiment, but the line between free-to-play and those who are spending money, pretty much, I'm not going to say it's a ravine, but it's definitely a noticeable gap, because obviously, if you can put down the money to max limit break your SSRs, and especially those coming in the Spotlight banner, then you will be at a definite advantage. But the flip side of that is you don't need that to get the anticipated enjoyment out of Uma Musume. You can do the legend races just fine. You can do the new scenarios coming out just fine. In fact, whenever new scenarios do come out, that's your chance to catch up. And yes, there's a power creep as well. But again, you don't necessarily need those power creeps, because the game gives you so much to supplement so that you can enjoy winning PvE at least. PvP is a different story, but that depends on I'm pointing at, as if I have a camera, your preferences and what you want to achieve. If you are going for PvP, yes, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is reroll until you get things that are very good. In this case, at this point in time, in the beginning of July 2025, reroll on Kita-san banner until you get 4 limit breaks. And if you don't know the reason why, Future Jordan should probably add a card here showing you my Kita-san Black video, or just look for anyone else talking about Kita-san Black SSR, because that card has a very high specialty priority value, which pretty much guarantees that Kita-san Black is going to be giving you friendship training. And if anyone else joins in with the speed stat, 80 plus speed every single turn on top of power, because Kita-san Black also comes with the power stat bonus. That's your tip for today.
And as a free-to-play, I only have what I've got if I don't get lucky. But that's me. So hopefully I'll be around to train more girls and put out more videos. I'm a game developer myself, so that's why I kind of like wrapping my mind around this stuff and
although I will forget a lot of things. I think you don't need to be, obviously, someone in tune with video games to really be, at least efficient in Uma Musume, if we're talking about Uma Musume. You just need to get into your own groove. Even if you don't remember every single event or most of your events, if you have a good base strategy, like, hey, I'm training, say, Daiwa Scarlet, and she's a pace chaser, what support cards are going to give me the skills I need, but can I even hit the stats? Can I build into speed at all? How much power am I getting? How much stamina am I getting? Okay, how much stamina do I need? So on and so forth for each and every Uma Musume you train. I think that's the more That's usually the kind of lesson I want to at least give away on this channel, if nothing else.
Getting my questions answered. So comment, criticize, advise, or ask questions in the comment section below. Or
so yeah, there's really not much else to say. This video speaks for itself, but it is a little dated because now we know a lot more about the things happening, and also things in the future. So the only last thing to say for this video is that, yes, we know what's pretty much going to happen. There's pretty much a 99.99% chance that we know what's coming. And if you don't know what that means, again, literally look in the community, search up scheduling on Discord, search up the Discord server for Uma Musume, look on things online. We all know, because I think the Chinese and Taiwanese servers are proof of that, but I haven't confirmed it. I've seen some talk about it, but essentially we know what's coming, and so we know what to save our resources for. We know what to try and train for if you are trying to get more out of your experience than just win. Otherwise, if you're just trying to win, like, the PvE things here and there, while getting these things like Kitasan Black will help Max Limit Broken, while being able to train certain girls or have certain skills and support cards available would be nice. They're not necessary. It does help, but it's not completely necessary. You have other avenues of success. If nothing else, last piece of advice, find someone good to follow, find a few good trainers to follow, and just use their guests for 40 plus speed, stamina, whatever stat you need, inspirations, on top of the support cards that may be max uncapped. Shrug. But yeah, without further ado, not really much else to say. If you have anything to say yourself, or any veteran trainers want to pop in, feel free to do so, because I'm still trying to retain knowledge myself, and I'll see you later. Thank you for watching. Bye!